Welcome to an NCAA tournament edition of the Five Star Zone. Rico Beard, Harold Shelton, senior analyst from Big Ten Network, here to join us as we get ready to start the NCAA tournament. The first four play-in games are done, and now we look towards the Big Ten teams heading into that first weekend. And before we get into that, I just want to say that, the brackets and all of that is really, somebody put it best, it's a time for people to wave their flags and show that they were right. I told people, man, North Carolina is going to come out with a vengeance. And man, San Diego State had no chance, no shot. You could tell that everybody from Carolina was sick of hearing, you do not belong here. They did you a favor. Your AD got you into this tournament. They left, zero doubt. It got to the point, Harold, I'm just like, okay, why does Hubert Davis still have his starters in the game with 12 minutes to go and you're up 40? I didn't understand that. The only thing you can do is get people hurt. But now, look, we're going to get to the Big Ten teams in a second. But it seems like, statistically speaking, there's a first four team that makes it to at least the second round. And I predicted North Carolina. I said I could even see them in the Sweet 16. We've all seen rallying cries where teams, it's that us versus the world, whether it was UConn when they went on that miraculous run where they had to win their entire tournament. And then after that, they just kept winning. I remember Michigan when, they had the plane incident and that galvanized that team. I look at this and I'm wondering, did maybe the slap in the face to Carolina and realize that, hey, we are still a blue blood? Is this sustainable?
It could be. I mean, talent was never the issue in North Carolina. They have some players who are very inconsistent, and we saw the good side of that yesterday where they started making threes early, and then they got in the flow. They got out and started running, which is when they're at their best. And, it's funny, like you mentioned, they can make a run. Like, they're favored now in the first round game against Ole Miss, despite being the lower seed. So you aren't alone on that thinking when it comes to Vegas, also favoring North Carolina. And you're right, we've seen several of the first four teams make a run. I mean, Michigan State was in it in 2021, and I knew the winner of that game versus UCLA was going to make at least the Sweet 16 because the draw was so good. And UCLA wound up going all the way to the Final Four. We've seen VCU go all the way to the Final Four from it. Syracuse has made a run out of it as well. So, yeah, sometimes that could just be a launching pad. You kind of recalibrate, figure everything out, start all over, and then you win the game, and then you just carry that momentum through.
Well, that's why I say that, I do count these first four games as part of the tournament, because it's not like you just go and get in and then immediately everybody gets shellacked. Like, they actually start playing, and it's a wake-up call for some teams. But because people are like, oh, it doesn't count if you're not a part of 64. If you in this game, because I've seen the winner go on to do stuff. So you telling me that UCLA that year, it didn't count because they had to play in that first game? No, they made it to the Final Four. So I just watched Carolina and was like, wow, I don't know if they'll ever play that good again. I mean, I think at one point they were like 10 for 15 for three. Like that. It was a guy came off the bench. I forget, he literally banked one in as the clock was going off. Like, all right, y'all just showing off now. Put these guys in with the white shirts and that we probably will never see again. Put them in the game. Save some of these points. All right, this ain't ACC talk. Let's get to the Big Ten. Harold, is there one Big Ten opening round game that really drew your attention?
I mean, outside of the obvious Michigan, UC San Diego one, I'm intrigued by Purdue High Point. I just think the styles there are very interesting. I don't know if High Point can stop the pick and roll of Trey Kaufman-Renn and Braden Smith, but the way that High Point likes to play, like, they're the second best offensive efficiency team in the country. They shoot 68% at the rim. They get 38 points in the paint per game. And they use their bench. And we know Purdue's rim protection has been awful. They've given up tons of layups, tons of drives to the rim. They're not deep. And so you wonder, I know it's kind of a trendy 4-13, and we've seen Purdue as a higher seed lose to a North Texas, lose to a St. Peter's, lose to a Fairleigh Dickinson. So there is, some recent history there of them as a 4 seed or higher losing to a double-digit seed. And, it's a contrasting styles thing. Can that 2-man game of Purdue kind of withstand all that offense from High Point?
See, when I look at this Purdue team, Harold, I mean, if I had to pick the first Big Ten team to lose, I'm going to say Purdue, because they just seem to run out of gas about beginning of February. They weren't that team that I thought, okay, Purdue, no Zach Edey, but you know what? They're still going to keep this thing going. You got the guy who was the preseason player of the year. I'm just not seeing the same Purdue team, and they are limping to the finish line. And I don't know if they'll be able to dig deep and come up with at least a 4-game run to get to the Final Four. They just look like a team that's just ready for somebody to put them out the misery. Now maybe it's just me, but I had high hopes for Purdue, and I watched this team now, and everything is a struggle for them. Nothing comes easy. Am I just over exaggerating?
Well, I think February and March wasn't kind of them at all. I think after they beat, I think it was USC, and they, looked like they were going to be near the top of the Big Ten. They were 19-5, 11-2 in conference play. And then from that point on, they lost 6 of their last 9. And it kind of started with that Michigan game where they were up big and allowed Michigan to come all the way back and steal it from them late. And from that point on, their defense
like Michigan broke them.
Bad. Yeah, I think so. And then we saw it again in the Big Ten tournament where Michigan was able to do whatever they wanted. And we see the rim protection be an issue in that game. I mean, you remember the Michigan State game where they had 10 dunks in that game because there was no resistance at all at the rim.
It was Lob City. Yeah, I was just like, wow. Anybody who won that dunk could have it.
And so with a team like High Point that likes to get up and down, that is very efficient, can they survive a game that could turn into a shootout? Maybe Braden Smith and Trey Kaufman-Renn, maybe that 2-man game will be enough. And, they'll just have better players in general. Maybe that's just the way they, can get around it. But when you're bottom 15 in the country and defending the 2, and you're bottom 10 and defending the rim, like that's just not a recipe to stay around long in this tournament.
Yeah, so Purdue's the one team that I'm just kind of shaking my head at. But let's talk about the Michigan game against UC San Diego. I mean, Vegas is saying expect a close game. They come out with tall, like their guards are tall, but I think the tallest player on their team is 6'8" that they're going to run out there. Michigan has the 2 7-footers, area 51. It really, they say styles make the fight. And I think that this is one where who can impose their will early and get that lead, because I think if Michigan can go out there, play disciplined ball and really cross the half-court line, dump the ball down low to Wolf and let Wolf and Golden do that little high pick and roll between the two of them, I don't think that they can stop that. Now, on the flip side, if Michigan allows UC San Diego to go out there and dictate the tempo and cause turnovers and force bad shots, Michigan's going to be in for a long night because their turnovers are just contagious. Once it starts happening, Harold, you've seen it. They can't help themselves. And then it's not even like, when somebody goes in and gets a nice rip. It's just unforced, throw it out of bounds, off your foot. There's nobody else around. You killed your own fast break turnovers.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right about that, especially about the styles making the fights. I want to see if UC San Diego's defense is very interesting, and I feel like it's going to take a while to kind of figure it out, and they play multiple styles. So the fact that they're basically 6'4" to 6'8" across the board, obviously they don't have the height to match up with a Danny Wolf or a Vlad Golden, and we know that. So how do they try to combat that is the question. I know they do play some matchup zone, They do play, no middle defense, which basically they try to keep the ball away from the middle of the court at all times. They try to send you baseline, always have a help defender come over, potentially trap in corners, things like that. And so if it's Danny Wolf trying to handle the ball and, spinning around and all that stuff, if he's spinning into a defender and that's a turnover, like that's a problem. But at the same time, if they're able to get the ball inside, and they can kind of do what they want once they get it there. But the question is, can they get it there? With those guards being pretty tall, Trey Donaldson's not the tallest guy. If he's trying to get it in the post, that could be a bit of an issue. Again, as we've seen, even in the Maryland game that they won that game because they were plus 30 on the glass. They still turned it over a ton of times.
They turned it over 19 times, yeah. But they were they out rebounded Maryland like 26 rebounds or something like ridiculous like that.
Right, and they gave up 29 points off of turnovers, but they were able to win because they controlled the glass. UC San Diego is not a team that turns it over. They turn you over a lot, as we've talked about. So, to your point, if they're able to get Michigan out of their offense and force them to take a lot of threes, then, I think that plays into, I think your host says that the Fighting Forks hands. Yeah. If not, and Michigan's kind of able to control the pace and get inside, then that's going to be a long night because they just don't have the size to deal with that.
Yeah, because it is funny. It looks like their logo was the reject of Arizona State was like, nah, we don't really like that one. They're like, all right, well, you're going to give it away. We'll take it. The Tritons. But yeah, I look at that. I mean, Vegas says that's going to be a close game. All the heavy hitters are betting on the Tritons. The public are betting on Michigan, but the line keeps going down. Harold, I said this is a game where the first 10 minutes are going to dictate what I think the game is going to be. And I think that this is going to be a Michigan blowout, or if this game is close, this is where you may see that first round upset. For Michigan, it's just enforce your will early and often and just let them know, as the kids say, you just too small. You can't guard us, and we're going to do whatever it is we want to do. You cannot play down to their game. You cannot do that. This is I hate the fact that it's at 10 o'clock at night Eastern time because I really would like to watch it later. So it's like I got to make sure because I think that it's going to be an interesting game. And Vegas ain't often wrong. So if that's the case, that means we may be up to about 12:30 to see who actually won this thing. At least you get the hour back. So it'll be 11:30 for you. But I look at this one and I'm just like, yeah, this is one that I've circled that I'll know within the first 10 minutes of what to expect from this Michigan team and how focused that they are. Did Dusty May galvanize his team? Because they look dead in the water after they lost to Michigan State in East Lansing, and now they just look like they can't be stopped. Trey Donaldson, I've often said Michigan goes as far as Trey Donaldson. And this is a game where Trey can kind of show that, you know what, I can run this team. I'm not going to turn the ball over. I would say probably the magical number for Michigan is 9. If you can keep the turnovers to 9 or less, I think you have a chance of winning. If you hit double-digit turnovers, I just don't see it at all.
And the other thing that's interesting about them, too, is they don't foul a lot. Teams only get 15 free throws a game against them. They really pack the paint. They force you to shoot threes. Now, again, they haven't seen anybody like Wolf and Golden. They just haven't. In the Big West, you're not going to see teams with 2 7-footers. So I'd be curious to see how they do that. But they really do pack the paint. It's usually just one shot. And they want you to take a lot of threes. Teams that shoot against them, 44% of their shots come from 3. And they only allow 45% on 2. So again, it's a styles make fights kind of thing. And then on offense, their best player is a 6'6" forward who also plays a little backup point guard for him, and Tate Jones. He leads the country in fouls drawn and free throw attempts and made free throws. So if he's getting in the lane, he's causing problems.
That's problematic because you can't have Golden or Wolf. Well, Golden doesn't get fouled. Golden went to the Zach Edey school that I don't think either one has ever had more than 3 fouls in a game. And they play physical ball. Like Zach Edey would always amaze me. Like, he finished the game 2 fouls. Really? 2 fouls. Other people, man, they get 2 fouls just going to the scoring table. And that's Golden. Golden rare. I mean, he times the blocks. He does everything right. But I'm always shocked that he gets a little bit of the reputation as well. Wolf has been in foul trouble, but Golden doesn't get in foul trouble at all. If you could get 4 fouls on him, that's like fouling him out the game. I don't even think he would know what to do if he had 4 fouls.
No, that's true. I think he's done a good job in terms of like walling up at the rim. He seems to do like just enough where he hits you with his body, but his arms are up like this. So as long as he's not swiping down like that, then I think he kind of gets away with some contact. But, that's good positioning by him. And, if the refs aren't calling it, he should just continue to do what he's been doing. And it's certainly been working for him to stay on the court.
All right, let's move on. Michigan State taking on Bryant Friday night at 10 o'clock. What do we see here for the Spartans going against Bryant?
So, as a 15 seed, this isn't like your prototypical kind of happy to be here 15 seed. Like, this is a team that's, 6th nationally in average height. They kind of average 6'7". Their 5 starters are 6'6", 6'6", 6'8", 6'8", 6'11". And they also have like a 6'7" dude that plays a lot.
Kind of like that Baylor national championship team a few years ago.
Yeah, they switch a lot of stuff. Yeah, because they're pretty much all the same height. Their best player is Raphael Pinzon's the St. John's transfer. He makes like 40% of his threes. They got another high major transfer in Earl Timberlake, who spent some time in Miami and Memphis. They like to get up and down. So I think that might actually be a good thing for Michigan State, because in these games early on against the lower seeds, when it's lower possessions and things feel tighter, the pressure might get to you more. But in a free-flowing game, we've seen Michigan State likes to do that. They like to get up and down when they can. And so we know Bryant likes to score. They're 13th in the country at 82 points a game. They're 5th in tempo. They get about 72 possessions in. But they're a weird team. They're not a great 3-point shooting team. They shoot a good amount of them, but they rather do most of their work inside. Like, they like to crash the glass. They like to get second chances. They like to score in the paint. And, they like to block a lot of shots and kind of start the break from there. But I don't know if that necessarily works against a Michigan State team that wants to get out and run and wants to block shots, and they control the defensive glass. And, if they get the rebound, they're going to score, because Bryant's transition defense is not good at all. So I think if it winds up being, an up and down game, I think Michigan State's certainly comfortable playing that. Bryant's not a team that shoots a lot of threes. They don't get to the line a lot. They do a lot of one-on-one stuff. It's not like crisp ball movement or anything. It's just kind of, hey, go make a play if you got a mismatch.
Right. No, I saw too, like, I guess really 4 of their 5 starters averaging around 33, 34 minutes a game. So that's not a lot of substitution, which I think would be advantage MSU of a wear down type of foul. Because I was trying to think of a team that could compare, because I thought, would it be Illinois? Would it be Iowa? Were 2 games where the 2 teams came out and then eventually got worn down and ended up being double-digit victories for Michigan State. But, if it was a part of the game where State was down, I was trying to think of, like, is there a team comparable this season to what the Spartans have seen in Bryant?
Yeah, I was trying to think of one too, and it's kind of hard to say. I don't want to necessarily say Iowa, because I think Iowa's a better shooting team than them. Because Bryant's around 33% from 3, so it's not great. But they do like to get up and down. They would much rather play an up and down style. Maybe it's like a Rutgers kind of team where they've got some talent. They don't necessarily shoot the 3 well, but they want to get out and be athletic and kind of hunt for mismatches to crash the glass. So maybe it's a Rutgers kind of team. But defensively is where they certainly have some issues. And I think as part of that up and down style, I think they're fine trying to outscore you. But, they've had so many games. They gave up 99 to St. John's. They gave up 112 to Grand Canyon, 90 to Siena, 86 to Fordham. So this isn't like a lock you down, play in the 50s, 60s kind of team. Like they want to get out and go. And I feel like if Michigan State isn't turning the ball over, they should be able to get a ton of points in transition.
You brought up Grand Canyon. That's Maryland's first round opponent. What do you see the Crab Five, and how can they handle the antelopes of Grand Canyon?
Well, this is their second straight trip to the dance. They beat St. Mary's last year, looked pretty good doing it. My issue there is Grand Canyon likes to get out and run too. They force turnovers. They do a really good job protecting the paint. But kind of similar to UC San Diego, have they seen a front line like Derek Queen and Julian Reese? I don't know if they'll just be able to do what they want inside like they have in their league. But they get to the line a ton. And the fact that Maryland doesn't have a bench, as we know, they got the 7th highest free throw rate in the country, and like nearly a quarter of their points come on free throws. So if they're actually getting the calls, if they're driving in, they're getting fouls, and say Reese has 2 or Queen gets 2 or, one of their guards gets 2, and they have to put somebody else in that's much worse, then you wonder, does that, tip the scales a little bit to Grand Canyon? I think Maryland's still good enough to win that game. But I do think that's a tricky matchup just because of the way Grand Canyon plays.
Okay. And now we don't know who Illinois is going to be playing yet, because they get their guys are playing tonight, right? Because then the 11th.
Yeah, they get the Texas Xavier winner.
Either one of those teams, do you think cause a problem for Illinois? Because I've said it, Illinois is the box of chocolate. I don't know what I'm going to get. I could get the Illinois that lost to Duke. I can get the Illinois that went into Chrysler and just beat the brakes off Michigan. I can get the Illinois that played Michigan State that looked like they had the game won, and then it was like they lose by double. I have no idea when it comes to Illinois and what this team can do. They got a pro on their team. They like to shoot threes. They just don't make threes, but man, I guess they believe in shoot because you just keep shooting. That's their philosophy. They're a 6 seed. Can either one of these teams pose a problem for them?
I mean, it certainly could, but I think it would be more of Illinois not doing what they're supposed to do. They're definitely more talented than both of them if you just look at the overall roster. I actually don't mind Illinois' draw if they are able, if you get good Illinois, because you get Kentucky after that, who's been banged up and kind of going the wrong way. And Kentucky wants to play an up and down style, which is what Illinois wants to do anyway. So I think if I'm Illinois, maybe I want to play Texas. I know they've got Johnson, and he's arguably been the best freshman in the country in terms of scoring. But that's a team that fouls a lot. Illinois loves to get to the line. Texas isn't a good rebounding team. Illinois could kill them on the glass. Yeah, they're a little loose with the ball at times, and they don't really force a lot of turnovers. So I feel like Texas is probably a better matchup. Xavier is going to be more disciplined, and they shoot a lot of threes, and we know threes and free throw shooting, they're top 10 in the country in both of those categories. So, that could be an issue if the game gets close. But if we get good Illinois, like that could be a Sweet 16 team, because I think Kentucky as a 3 is flawed with their injuries. And they're playing in Milwaukee. They somehow get a little home court advantage there. If the Chicago fans, the Illinois fans that live in Chicago, that's only an hour drive for them if they want to go up there. So it certainly could be worse as a 6 seed for Illinois, that's for sure.
It's funny because I still say I don't know how in the world the NCAA allowed an 8 seed to have home court advantage in Louisville. If Louisville wins and they get to play Auburn, it's going to be a sea of red.
Yep.
That's good for Michigan and Michigan State if they win their games, because that means you may get Auburn knocked out, because Auburn under Bruce Pearl. And here, let me give you a fun fact. You probably already knew this, but under Bruce Pearl, Auburn as a 1, 2, or 3 seed has not made it out the first weekend.
I can believe it, because even the year they made the Final Four, they were 5.
Yeah. So Auburn as a 1, 2, or 3, not that good. Now, on the flip side, Izzo as a 1 or a 2, 5 out of the 7 times he's made the Final Four. So, all right. So let's get to Wisconsin, Montana. Is Wisconsin simply, you know what? We just got some rest. We were dead tired. as I said it before, you saw, it was Michael Jordan one day, it was Marcus Jordan the next day. It was just horrible. Like Tanja had nothing left, 1 for 14, and if he ain't scoring, the rest of that team. But Blackwell did his part. I thought that had he won, he could have made a case for the tournament MVP because that game would have been all him because his buddy didn't show up in that game.
No, I agree. I thought Blackwell was the most consistent through that 4-game run. I think this is a good matchup for Wisconsin. I'm more worried about kind of the intangible stuff. You play 4 games in 4 days. You fly cross country to Denver. You got the early game on Thursday in altitude, playing a Montana team who'll be used to the altitude. So I think it might take them a while to kind of get adjusted. But if you just look at the numbers specifically, Montana, they shoot the 2 well. From 3, they're pretty solid, but they're not good at all defending the rim. They're not good at all in terms of getting rebounds. There's a lot of one shot now. Wisconsin, they're favored by just as much as Michigan State is, despite being a lower seed. So Vegas is kind of telling you like that's a game they should be fine as long as they don't go 7 for 39 from 3 or whatever it was the other day. But like Montana doesn't turn you over. They're like top 250 in defensive efficiency. So shots should be there for Wisconsin. Even if they're not making threes, they should have an easier time getting to the basket, getting fouled, which they couldn't do against Michigan because of the 7-footers down there.
Yeah. And then 7 UCLA going up against 10 Utah State. First one to 50 wins.
Yeah, I can certainly see that. I like UCLA, and I think most of it is just because I am not a Mountain West guy in the tournament. Outside of San Diego State, there's been too many examples of a Mountain West team that's supposed to do something and they haven't done it. Utah State, we've seen, they're a 10 seed that could make a run, losing the first round. Oh, Colorado State, they're going to make a run, losing the first round. Oh, New Mexico, they've got all these guys losing the first round. Like we've seen it over and over and over again. And outside of San Diego State, which we saw last night, it didn't live up to it. But over the years, they've been the only team out of that league that's had success. I think UCLA defensively will do enough to lock them up. And I don't think they'll see the 3-point explosion that they saw in Indianapolis. So I think UCLA should be able to advance there and play Tennessee.
And then once again, you know what? I remember UCLA. I almost forgot. I'm like, I thought it was one more team. It's Oregon. Still getting used to Oregon in the Big Ten. But Oregon in another 5-12 game against Liberty, looks like they were like 7.5-point favorites. What about the Ducks? Because the Ducks to me are kind of like the West Coast Illini. I don't really know what I'm gonna get with these Ducks teams. Like they can be great at times, and then they could be wow. I expected more. And then you get a game like when they played Wisconsin and came back and took them to overtime and beat them. Yeah,
Oregon. And I'll say Dana Altman is one of the more underrated coaches in the country. We don't necessarily talk about him when it comes to NCAA tournament success. But, amongst active coaches in the Big Ten, at least, he's behind Izzo and Painter. He's won a game, I think it's 7 of the last 8 appearances that he's made the tournament. Actually, it was all 8. My apologies. So this is a guy who usually does well in the tournament with Oregon. He's usually at his most dangerous when he's underseeded. So I actually wouldn't be shocked if they made a Sweet 16 run. It probably falls short to Duke there, but I think they can get past Liberty. I don't trust Arizona at all, even though Arizona has more talent. We've seen them in the tournament, crash and burn way too many times. And we've seen Caleb Love kind of shoot them in and out of games. So I like Oregon. I think they're really athletic. If Shellstad can make some threes for them, that kind of opens up everything else. And, I thought the big man, Nate Biddle, played really well against Michigan State. In the last game of the regular season, he had career high 36 against Washington. So he's playing pretty well going into the tournament. I kind of like the Ducks to win a couple games.
All right, so your confidence pick, if you had to pick one Big Ten team that you definitely knew will win their game and move forward, who would it be?
I got to go Michigan State, right? I think it's 2 seed, the 15 being a team that is athletic, but wants to play up and down. I actually think favors this Michigan State team. If this was a Michigan State team that wanted to play slower like it has in years past, that might be a bit of an issue. But I just have a hard time seeing a team like with less bench and less overall talent outscore Michigan State in a game that's in the 80s or 90s. I just have a hard time seeing that.
And the team that I guess would be the opposite of that. Who's the team that should be on upset alert? Because I think every Big Ten team is favored.
Yeah, everyone is favored.
Happened in a long time.
Yeah, because we actually have, I think all teams are 8 or higher. So we don't have like a 9 or 10 or 11 in there like we would have if Indiana should have been in there. But like they might have been an underdog. But all 8 teams are seeded, 8 or higher. So, they're all favored. I mean, Michigan is by far the smallest favorite of the bunch. I would say it's between them or Purdue in terms of upset alert. But I'm with you. I think you'll know early on if Michigan's going to win that game or not. If they come out, they punch them in the mouth, you see them, dominate inside, and they have no answer for it, you're like, okay, this could get bad. But if they're down and, you see San Diego's kind of forcing them out of everything they want to do, and then they're getting to the free throw line like they like to do, and guys are in foul trouble, then that could be a long night.
All right, so what you got for me stat-wise?
So this is kind of, I know we're both Michigan State guys, but I also have to be fair. So I thought it was interesting in the 64-team era, there have been 39 teams, including this year, to enter the tournament as a 1 or a 2 seed that weren't ranked in the preseason poll. Mm-hmm. And they've combined for 0 Final Fours, and they've averaged fewer than 2 wins per tournament. And this year, that falls to Michigan State and St. John's. So we'll see if they can wind up breaking that trend. But that is a pretty interesting trend that goes back about 40 years.
Well, see, and this is where, and I'm not being a homer, I would lean more towards St. John's because I think you got to play either Kansas or Arkansas. Arkansas, 2 teams that spent a ton of money in NIL, bringing transfer portal players in. They have talent. That, to me, is it. Like, whereas MSU, you get past the first game, you get past Bryant, and I think I'm not going to say it's easier, but you get the winner was a Marquette.
Let's go.
And then after that, you're probably going to get an Iowa State team, but it's a depleted Iowa State team. So I look at that second round game, and I'm like, wow, that's. I would have been up. I would say the same thing if Michigan State had to play the winner of Kansas or Arkansas. Like, man, that's 2 teams that can't get out their own way, but we've seen what happens when they do. It's like North Carolina. When everything lines up, you were like, yeah, now I see. Because I think Kansas started the year off number 1 overall. So, yeah, that'll be interesting. But no, I did see that stat. So, no, that's one that I'm going to counter that with, as I said earlier in the show, when MSU and Tom Izzo is a 1 or a 2 seed, they've made the Final Four 5 out of 7 times. Hopefully, it'll be 6 out of 8. And I'll see you down in San Antonio.
Yeah, that would be great.
I won't be dressed up like you, but I'll try my best.
If we get a Final Four team, Big Ten in general, I'll definitely dress it up on the pod for sure.
All right, appreciate it. All right, Harold, anything else before we take off?
No, that's it. No, I just appreciate you having me on, and I'm sure we'll do it again once these teams advance.
All right, yeah, we'll be breaking down the Sweet 16 sometime next week. For Harold Sheldon, I'm Rico Beard. Thanks for watching. Keep liking and subscribing to 5 Star Zone.